and welcome to episode 10 of Curious Casefiles. I'm Lisa.
I'm Danielle.
And I'm Jamie. Hello, everyone.
And I'm freezing.
You're freezing.
I've got my little granny heat pad on, so hopefully I'll warm up.
Yeah, it's quite chilly over there, isn't it?
It's absolutely freezing. And apologies that we're a day late. I turned my computer on yesterday to finalise everything, and there was no sound, and it took all day to get sound back. It was a nightmare, and I hate it.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
yeah, I installed drivers, and it's still nothing.
Hopefully we're good. Hopefully we're good to go now. But...
So we could have tried going live, but I wouldn't have heard Danielle, and it would have been stupid.
Yeah, it's stupid without me.
It's stupid without you. Yeah.
Danielle's back from her alien abduction.
Yeah, I heard about this.
How did you probe? I mean, how did it go?
Yeah, there was probes and abductions and everything else. But yeah,
there was probes.
I'm not going to talk about being probed.
No, let's not. Yeah, let's not go there.
Yeah, let's not.
No.
Yeah. So we did miss you last week, Danielle, and I ruined it. I stuffed it up, so I lost my slides.
I rewatched it. I watched it again. That was kind of like beyond your, control there. So what are you going to do?
Yeah, we decided to take a little break from UFOs this week because it was supposed to take a week, then it was supposed to take 2 weeks, then it was supposed to take 3 weeks, and it didn't. So we're going to take a little break. Every time. True crime. We're doing true crime. Danielle, talk.
We are.
We're going to do true crime today. And thank you, Expialidocious. Yes, I'm glad the aliens let me free as well. But yeah, so well, there was a little gray. Yeah,
they were a little gray.
I'm gonna be enigmatic about this. So yeah, I can't. I'll save it for another time. I'll give my testimony another time.
Right. Okay.
I might hypnotize her.
That's what I could say. Under hypnosis.
That might be what it takes. Yeah. So hopefully you guys aren't too disappointed. We still have more to tell with UFOs, of course, because there's just
we'll get back to that next week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Technical difficulties permitting.
Yeah.
There's not going to be any though, because I won't allow it.
But just a warning. I've done half of this slide, so slides and
Jamie wrote this one,
so we're bound to get into some trouble. But never mind.
We're going to be trying to read what Jamie wrote. That'll be fun.
Well, we can paraphrase. We can do some paraphrasing, and we'll just see how it goes. We know the story. We know the storyline. We know what's going on.
Yeah, I gave you a little hint last week about hitchhiking and why you shouldn't do it.
Yeah. Yes. Well, Danielle was hitchhiking to the galaxy.
That's what happened.
This is going to be hitchhiking to somewhere else. But
I can honestly say that I have never hitchhiked. I was scared to do it when I was younger, and for obvious reasons, which we're going to find out today, why it's not a good idea.
No,
definitely not. Don't do it.
No,
don't do it. And this is why. We're going to tell you exactly why, or at least one of the reasons why, but a very good reason.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts on September the 29th, 1978, in Berkeley, California, where a 15-year-old girl called Mary Vincent was standing at the side of the road with a few other people looking to hitch a ride. And that's where it all went wrong, really.
Yeah.
And that's all for this week. We'll see you next.
No, you don't.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Now, this was the late 70s, and hitchhiking was fairly popular in the 70s for people to get around, especially young people who maybe couldn't drive yet or couldn't afford public transport. However, after hearing this story, you'll probably understand why it became a bit taboo to hitchhike and why it dwindled in popularity after the events of this case and similar cases, but this one especially.
Yeah.
We're in 1978 and Mary is on the side of the road with a little thumb out, hoping for a lift.
Only 15 years old.
Yeah, and this is her. Lovely young lady. And oh my God, I know what happened, so I'm not going to say anything.
Yeah.
Danielle, take over. I'm going to spoiler alert.
Okay, so on September 29th, you want me to go ahead with that first one there, 1978 in Berkeley, California?
I've just done that one.
Oh, then I'll go on to the next, which is smaller. I got to like expand my screen. Okay, so
I'm sorry. It's Jamie's fault.
Mary was only 15 years old. She was planning on visiting her grandparents in Corona, and unfortunately, this didn't go according to plan. After waiting for some time with her thumb out there, a blue van pulled up, and a friendly-faced older man beckoned Mary over, like he was going to give her a ride. She approached the vehicle and
I would beg to differ about the friendly face.
Yeah.
No.
After seeing him, I would too. I don't know whose idea of it was to put.
Is that a friendly face, everybody?
No, absolutely not. So she approached the vehicle and she told the man that she was looking to get a ride to Corona. And he stated that it was a bit out of his way, but he was heading that away. So he agreed to go ahead and give her a ride. So she went back over to the other hitchhikers that were, apparently there was a group of them there who were all trying to catch different rides. And she informed them that she was going to catch this ride with this older gentleman. Now, a couple of the hikers asked if they could join, but Mary told them that the man had already stated that there wasn't enough room, which there was a van.
Red flag.
Yeah, I mean, there was a van, so I'm not sure how there wasn't enough room, but they found it suspicious as well. But they didn't argue it. They just were, of course, disturbed by it. And especially the girls that were in the group, because they suggested that Mary should not leave and wait with this man, this stranger, with this big van, nobody else in it, and suggested that she wait for another ride. But 15 years old, we know everything, right? Yeah. Mary was desperate to get to traveling, and she felt like she was confident enough and capable of handling herself if anything happened. So she ignored their pleas and headed back to the van and got in. And it's a decision that she would later regret.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the man in question was Lawrence Singleton, who at the time, he was in his early 50s, and he was also a former sea merchant. Not that that's going to have any impact on today's story. Yeah, things were innocent them days, and that's the trouble. I think
this is him, and that may be a bit of a spoiler alert that he's got a mugshot.
Yeah. Well, who knows? We can guess.
Yeah, that's anyway. Lawrence Singleton.
Yeah. So Mary got into the vehicle, and as they set off, them two shared like light-hearted conversations, like about the weather and crap like that, as you do. And as soon as the trip was going to take some time, and the fact that Mary had been standing on her feet all that time, just waiting to catch a ride, she felt comfortable enough to basically have a little bit of a kip. As you know, long journeys, a lot of people sleep who's not driving. Hopefully the ones who's driving are not sleeping. There's something wrong if you are. Anyway, it's not exactly clear how long Mary slept for. However, when she awoke, she soon realised that Lawrence was not going to the route that they had agreed on, and he had missed a vital turn-off and now heading in a totally different direction.
Now,
red flags.
One of the reports that I had read on this too said that she obviously was very tired, and he had made a comment like, "You look very tired. Are you not feeling well? Are you sick?" And he put his hand on the back of her neck to see if she had a temperature. And at first she was like, okay, this is strange. But then she thought, okay, he's just being really friendly. And there was, he didn't touch her after that. And she went to sleep. But like Jamie said, I'm not sure how long she slept for. But
it was getting a bit touchy-feely.
Yeah.
So she's woke up and they're going the wrong way. And Mary was concerned, obviously, as to why he was going the wrong way. And he claimed that it was an honest mistake and that he'd missed a turn. However, they had gone a significant distance in the wrong direction, and Mary became suspicious. However, he then proceeded to turn around and headed once again in the right direction. He then, however, announced that he needed to go to the bathroom, and I had to change that because Jamie wrote he needed to go for a pee. And I thought, he needed to go for a pee.
You said it now.
He
anyway.
needed to urinate.
Whatever, I just want to tell you that Jamie wrote he was going for a pee. No, he went to the bar. He needed to go to the bathroom, and he was going to look for a.
But there's no bathrooms. You can't say bathroom.
He needed to urinate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Relieve himself.
He needed to relieve himself, allegedly.
Yeah.
So started looking for a location to pull over. He pulled off the main road and started going up a little side road. At this point, Mary noticed that one of her shoes was untied, and she made the conscious decision that when they pulled over, she would also get out of the vehicle to tie her shoelace, thinking, oh, he's a bit older. If I need to run, if this is like a bit dodgy and I need to run, I could outrun him. So that she was going to get out, tie her shoelace, whatever. So they pulled over. He got out of the vehicle and she did so at exactly the same time. And she immediately hunkered down and began to tie her shoelace. When suddenly, Lawrence, who had circled around the back of the vehicle, came up behind her and he whacked her across the back of the skull with a large hammer that he kept in the doorway and knocked her unconscious. He then picked her up and put her back in the back of the vehicle.
Okay.
And Danielle's going to pick up with what happened next.
Yeah, well, when she came to, she found herself in the back of the vehicle, of course, completely frightened. Her hands and feet were bound, and she was completely naked at this point. So Lawrence was towering over her, and he then forced the young girl to drink something, and it was an unknown alcoholic substance, according to her. But after he gave her this, he repeatedly, brutally, and viciously attacked her, sexually assaulting her, and did this to this 15-year-old girl for hours. And when it was all done for that time period, he fell asleep. And during that time, she tried really hard to escape as best as she could, but she was unable to get free from whatever he used to bind her. So she was forced to lay there helpless, still naked, and waiting for whenever the attacker woke up, not knowing what was going to happen next. Well, when he finally awoke, he started the vehicle and he began driving. And the thoughts were running through Mary's head during these hours were
terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, she was terrified in, the abuse that she had endured so far, and what was her fate going to be? When was this going to stop? Would he assault her again, or would he kill her? So she was obviously had a lot to be terrified about.
A lot for anybody, especially a 15-year-old as a child, basically.
Yeah.
It's disgusting.
Terrifying. Yeah. So then Lawrence pulled over again. And once again, he got in the back of the vehicle with Mary and continued to assault her again for hours. Repeatedly assaulting her both physically and sexually, as you can imagine. So, he was at it again. Mary begged him to stop and let her go throughout the entire ordeal, promising not to tell a soul if he would only set her free. And after the second prolonged assault to her, and to her surprise, Lawrence agreed. He removed her from the vehicle and laid her on the dirt path. Lawrence shouted to her, "You want to be free? You want me to let you go? Okay, I will." He then returned to his vehicle momentarily, then returned to Mary with a deranged look on his face. He grabbed her and started striking her, and then she began to attempt to defend herself and grabbed desperately at his arms and clothes in an attempt to stop him assaulting her. It was at that moment that Mary felt herself falling backwards. Time seemed to slow down in this moment as she fell back to the ground, and she all of a sudden got confused as to why she was falling, when in her own mind she was grabbing hold to him really tightly to his shirt and to his arms. Well, that will become apparent.
Unfortunately, it will. Brace yourself. To her horror, she then realised the gravity of the situation that she now found herself in, when she saw that she was still indeed gripping his arm, but Lawrence was swinging a hatchet. This is the item he had gone to his van to retrieve, and shockingly, he had cut off her arm and it was still attached, gripping on to his arm. He stopped the assault momentarily when he realised this, and he tried desperately to remove Mary's now amputated arm from his arm, shaking it off as it was still tightly gripping him. Wow. During these frantic moments, Mary tried to crawl away, but to no avail. Lawrence was soon on top of her again, holding her other arm before hacking at it repeatedly until that too was removed from her body.
Wow.
Fucking psycho.
So evil.
Sorry, but yeah. All right.
That's for
In this moment, Mary made a decision that would ultimately save her life. She decided to play dead. She was in excruciating pain and losing blood at an alarming rate. However, she managed to muster the strength and the will to live enough to lie there completely still and silent. And
must be.
the amount of willpower and for a 15-year-old girl to do that, despite the pain, I can't even fathom how much strength that took for her to do that.
I've had back and leg ache all day, and for the last couple of days, and I've been in pain. And I've been screaming like a little bit. So can you imagine this little child?
No.
This sort of thing happened to him. I mean, how she could remain quiet.
The amount of agony that she was in, and to not make a noise.
Yeah,
just really difficult.
I can't even comprehend the strength that would take to do that.
No, the wherewithal to
must have been like astronomical.
Yeah, I can't even imagine either. I mean, I don't know how anybody could, but so he ended up dragging her, what was left of her, to the edge of a ravine, and he threw her over. And the drop was over 20 feet deep as she hit the bottom. So obviously she broke multiple bones when this happened, amongst everything else that the poor girl had going on with her body. She's laying there with broken bones. Most of her arms on either side, I think, were right at the elbow point. The forearms were missing. And she still had to remain silent and continue to play dead.
That's unbelievable.
I can't imagine. Yeah. So Lawrence then climbed down and he dragged her seemingly lifeless body into a culvert out of sight. And it was only then that he decided it was time for him to get away. He felt confident that she wasn't going to be found at this location. He was going to leave her for dead. But miraculously, and I mean miraculously, Mary was not dead. After she fell backwards, and as Lawrence had approached her to move the body, Mary used every bit of her will and energy into holding her breath and remaining silent to fake her death so that he would leave. And if you can imagine, which I can't, this must have been impossible with the amount of pain that she was enduring. But she managed, to feign death until his departure. And for a while, Mary sat there where he had left her, believing that she was surely going to die there and terrified to move in case he returned. And so she waited a while before even attempting to move. And then this girl is remarkable.
I know. I can't even believe what she did.
She then rubbed the stumps of what remained of her arms into the dirt to mix with the blood in the dirt to make like a mud to slow down the blood flow. And she began crawling her way back up out of that ravine. The strength must have taken. I mean, she even had this presence of mind to raise her arms to help with the blood flow and the loss of blood. Knowing that she had to keep, above her heart, right? Because we all, you learn that it slows down your blood. Well, that's why, I mean, miraculously, there's so many things about this that there was definitely some divine intervention.
This map on the screen, basically, this is the area. She crawled out of that canyon from the culvert. And for those that don't know, a culvert is like a large concrete sort of circular thing that goes under the road. So it's sort of like a sewer tunnel.
I call that.
And that's where he hid her body, thinking that she was dead. So she crawled out of this culvert, up a canyon, and hiked 3 miles to Interstate 5 like this, with multiple broken bones, whatever other injuries she had from the prolonged assaults, and
still naked. Yeah.
I can't even comprehend the strength that took. I can't even. And the bravery that it took.
Indeed, the bravery, yeah.
She almost had to have been, I mean, we know she was in shock, right?
Yeah.
But it had to have been that ability that made her overcome what would normally be the typical emotions and physical pain to get through that.
That was, That'd be unbelievable. Anyway, once Mary got to the road, I don't know how she did it. It probably took some time and effort. She used all her remaining energy to stand herself up and started to stumble up the road, holding these dirty, bloody stumps above her head, like Lisa just said, in an attempt to slow the bleeding. So far, this 15-year-old girl had been repeatedly sexually and physically assaulted, then mutilated, because that's what it was, basically. Because they talk about her arms being cut off, but she was hacked as well in other places and beat up and bashed. But she somehow not only managed to survive, but to control her bleeding, climb up a steep ravine
with no arms,
and got to her feet somehow. I mean, you just try doing that.
No.
And she made it to the road for help. Now, Mary watched helplessly as vehicles just drove past her. As you can imagine, I'm sure we've all been there when you've seen something a bit odd and you just carry on because, especially nowadays, it's more dangerous than you know. But at the same time, there's some people who should have probably stopped and didn't, as we're here.
Yeah. It might have been a terrifying sight, though.
Yeah.
Well, they might have been second guessing what they were seeing too, right? Like, am I really seeing this?
Yeah,
I know. Yeah, I mean, you could be in shock.
You wouldn't even know what you were looking at.
Well, you could you could be several miles up the road before you realise what you saw, or you might just thought as kids larking about and things. I know it would probably look shocking, but it could be, couldn't it? You know. Anyway, it's not clear whether they ignored her purposely or intentionally, as we just said. But you can imagine, like I said, the terror with this armless, naked girl, you know, walking up the road. That would be out of this world to see. You would not expect.
Well, you would think that you would stop, but until you're in that situation, you don't know. You don't know what you're going to think. I mean, it's not something that you can even imagine seeing.
Yeah.
Well, it took a couple vehicles for that to happen. Didn't it?
Well, yeah, it took a couple. One did slow down, and she must have thought anyway. Wow, I'm saved. This is it. I'm going to be saved. They slowed down. They took a look at what state she was in, and they panicked. They literally panicked. You know, she saw the horror in their face, and they just actually drove off. So she was left standing there, you know, in this state, and they just left her. Now, that's probably not okay. The other ones you can sort of say, well, you know, the process, but that obviously they saw there was something really wrong, and they drove off. And then finally, a couple who were lost tourists came across Mary and did stop to give aid. They wrapped some towels around her, what was left of her arms. And they also put clothes on Mary because, of course, she was naked to cover her body. They then took Mary to the nearest hospital where she obviously underwent multiple surgeries to save her life. Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of people, a lot less injuries would pass away even before this point, let alone this, because there was like apparently pools of blood, you know, as you can imagine.
She lost a hell of a lot of blood.
Yeah.
How she survived is just
thinking of making that mud mixture with her blood and that dirt to even stop it to help.
But that's not even going to give you maybe septicemia or.
But that proves that the survive instinct really kicked in there, because not a 15-year-old girl. I mean, I was surprised that she'd know that. It might be just something what she just, just all kicked in all of a sudden. You know, she knew she had to do certain things.
Yeah.
I don't know. But she would go on to give a full harrowing account of the attack to the police and gave a detailed description of her attacker. With this information, the police made a public announcement, and luckily, one of Lawrence's neighbours came forward believing the criminal was Lawrence Singleton. He recognised him because apparently she gave a good description as well. So,
and just really quickly before I move on, XB asked what year this was. It was in 1978.
Oh, I was going to say, I know.
Yeah.
1978. Yeah. So, I've got a quick picture of Mary to show you before we move on. Here she is. Very, very brave.
Yeah.
One of the bravest people I've ever actually read about, to be honest. What she went through and to survive. Amazing.
Indeed.
She shouldn't have gone through it, but...
Yeah, I know. Terrible. No one should, but yeah.
Yeah.
Especially that young. That's got... I believe it did, affected her for the rest of her life.
Oh, it would.
Obviously.
It's going to have psychological effects on you for the rest of your life.
Well, and it did, which we'll find out more.
So Lawrence Singleton was obviously arrested and he went on trial 6 months later. Mary told her harrowing story in court, and that successfully put Lawrence behind bars, but don't celebrate just yet. because there's more. After testifying against Singleton, he whispered something to her as the deputies led him out of the courtroom. Mary turned pale and left the courtroom. She later revealed that he'd said to her, "I'll finish this job if it takes me the rest of my life." Sick, twisted freak.
Just not needed at all. That was just...
As if he'd not put that girl through enough.
No.
Sick.
Yeah.
He was evil. It was demonic.
Yeah.
Yeah, the epitome of evil. Yeah. Disgustingly, despite the 5 counts that he was found guilty of, which were sexual assault, sodomy, kidnapping, mayhem, which is weird. I mean, what is mayhem? And attempted murder, he was only sentenced to 14 years in prison. Basically, because he didn't actually kill her, because she didn't die. That was the longest sentence that could be imposed at the time. The judge did announce that he would have given him a life sentence if possible, as he was completely disgusted at what he'd done. So you're all thinking, okay, it's a shame he didn't get life, but at least he got 14 years.
Not too fast.
Well, he might have got 14 years. However, after just under 8 years, he got released for good behaviour. Yeah, good behaviour. What the hell were they thinking?
They weren't.
So he stayed out of trouble in prison, but that's probably because there wasn't a young girl to assault and brutally attack in his jail cell.
Exactly.
For somebody to have done what he'd done and get released from prison on good behaviour is absolutely bloody disgusting.
That's not the first time we've heard of this. These sort of people doing these crimes and they get out in good behaviour. It's like, it's not even relevant. What they're doing in prison or can and can't do in prison, obviously, is going to prevent them misbehaving or doing certain things. So
I just can't comprehend how these people that make these decisions can make these decisions knowing exactly what these people have done and what they're capable of, and to think, oh, well, he's been a good boy. He's been a good boy while he's in prison and not had anybody to murder or decapitate or sexually assault. So we're going to let him out. Really?
Sick. Yeah. So obviously upon release, he's a free man, right? So he goes back to Florida, his native state. And in 1990, he was twice convicted of theft. He served a 60-day sentence for stealing a $10 disposable camera in the spring of 1990. And in the winter, he received a 2-year prison term for stealing a $3 hat. So I guess that's like breaking parole. But before his sentencing for the later crime.
No, because he's got out on good behaviour.
Yeah.
No matter if it's a $3 hat or whatever, should he not have been made to serve the rest of his sentence?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But before his sentencing for the latter crime, the $3 hat, he described himself to the judge as confused, muddle-headed old man.
Well, that's a poor excuse, isn't it?
Yeah.
How many millions of muddled old men are out there that don't...
I don't know what I'm doing. I'm confused.
Yeah.
Right?
You're not confused. You're a fucking psychopath.
Yeah. And in the spring of 1997, a neighbor called the police to report that Lawrence Singleton assaulted a woman in his home in Sulphur Springs, Florida. When the police responded, they found a dead body of, I believe she was 31 years old, Roxanne Hayes. Yeah, she had been stabbed multiple times in the upper body, and Hayes was a prostitute and also a mother of 3. Police led him away from the scene, and I'm kind of laughing, but mostly because I just can't believe
it's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. Yeah. He was heard saying as he's leaving, "This time I did it."
Like he's fucking proud of that.
It was his role.
Yeah.
So Mary Vincent, the 15-year-old who was so badly assaulted and hacked up her arms, she traveled from California to Tampa, Florida, to appear at Singleton's sentencing. And during her testimony, she described Singleton's attack and the toll that the ordeal had taken on her. The judge sentenced Singleton to death on April 14th, 1998. Now, after 3 years on death row, Singleton, in my opinion, got out of it easy. He died of cancer at the age of 74 in 2001 before he could be put to death in the prison hospital in North Florida Reception Center in Stark, Florida, I believe it was.
And I hope he rots in hell.
Oh, I'm sure he did. But he took so much away from her. She was actually a very well, for both women, but particularly Mary. She was a very good dancer. She was heading places. She said that she would have been the lead dancer in someplace in Vegas, the Lido de Paris in Las Vegas, and then Hawaii and Australia. And she was very, like I said, very serious and had really good dancing skills. But when this happened to her and they had to do these surgeries, they actually had to remove part of the tissue in her legs, a muscle probably, and things like that, and put it into her arms to save her life. So that ended that for her as well.
He took a lot more than just her arms from her. He took her innocence, and he took her life. He didn't kill her, but he took her life from her.
Yeah.
Oh,
I should imagine so. Yeah. Well, obviously, at the result of this sentencing and things like that, Mary and the public were obviously quite rightly outraged by the initial decision after a trial and the meagre sentence Singleton received, like we just said. In 1998, Mary Vincent went to Washington, D.C. to testify in favor of a congressional bill called the No Second Chances for Murders, Rapists, or Child Molesters Act. While appearing in front of members of Congress, Vincent shared details of her attack and how Singleton's lenient sentence allowed him to kill Roxanne Hayes nearly 20 years later after her own survival. She concluded with this: "I have now obtained the long overdue psychological counseling, as we just mentioned, to help me get over my nightmares and fear. Yet sometimes I still feel like that confused 15-year-old runaway girl, which, understandably, trapped in the body of a 35-year-old mother of two. No one should ever have to go through what I went through or what children of Roxanne Hayes will have to go through without a mother," which is right.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, this bill died in committee because Congress has always been Congress.
Yeah, because I'm sure there's something more important to be doing.
Yeah.
Right. So by the time this happened to Roxanne, Mary had a couple of relationships, and she had two boys. One was from a relationship that just didn't go anywhere, and the second was from a marriage that ended up failing, mostly because he couldn't deal with a lot of the notoriety and everything that was coming Mary's way, which Mary really wanted to stay private about things, but I mean, that's very difficult to do under the circumstances in her story.
Yeah.
So had Lawrence Singleton been sentenced under today's tougher laws for his 1978 rape and mutilation of a teenage girl, he would have been behind bars in California in 1997 and not in the doorway of his Florida home with bloody hands and a dead woman lying on the floor. So, mate changed it, but a bit bloody late. It makes no sense to release a guy like Singleton because he has done a good job folding shirts in prison, Governor Pete Wilson said in 1997. Now, some woman has paid for it, and yes, she did.
And isn't that always the case?
Roxanne Hayes wouldn't have been dead, and Mary wouldn't be living in fear either all the time that he was out, because he said he was going to finish the job, and she lived in fear.
She did.
Singleton got the maximum sentence possible when he was convicted for the gruesome crime of assaulting the hitchhiker Mary Vincent, chopping off her forearms and stuffing her unconscious body into a concrete culvert near Modesto. But at the time, judges were not allowed to impose consecutive sentences for each felony, which was absolutely ridiculous. And it shouldn't take something like this for you to change that, considering the gravity of what he did. So the most that he could have been given was 14 years and 4 months, which is pathetic. By working in prison and behaving himself, he managed to win parole after just 7 years and 9 months. And so he was a free man until the sheriff's deputies arrested him at his home and charged him with killing Roxanne Hayes. And that is actually Mary on the screen there when in 1998, I believe that picture was taken, when she went and testified in Congress.
So, I mean, I mean, these women may have been well behaved, but that didn't mean that they didn't have to live a nasty sentence. So he should have got punished. To be honest, I mean that's ridiculous.
Yeah. And this picture here is him upon his second arrest for murder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When he says, "I finally did it," I'm not convinced that was the only person he'd ever murdered. Considering the gravity of what he did to Mary, I wholeheartedly believe he had done something before.
Absolutely.
And that between the time when he got out of prison and when he finally was caught for killing Roxanne Hayes, it wouldn't surprise me if he'd done other crimes in between times.
Do you think he'd actually murdered before? Do you reckon? Because that might have been the thing he was trying to escalate to, and he never got there. But
he might have
I think he's definitely done something.
That wasn't the first time he'd committed a crime anyway.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
He was organised. He had everything ready. He had the hammer in the well of the door. He had the hatchet in his van. He obviously had stuff to bind her and tie her up. He was prepared. He was ready.
And he wasn't apprehensive about it. He wasn't scared at all. I mean, the first time I would think that somebody does that to a person's body, but he had no qualms about it at all.
Yeah.
I would bet my life that he'd done it before.
Well, you don't just go out of nowhere, pick up a woman and think, I mean, obviously they all start from somewhere, but
you don't start with that though, do you?
Then do it when he's released, go straight and do it. Similar thing again. There's got to be a history there, but well, there you go. I mean, don't these people read these sort of stories when they come to release them? Don't they think to themselves, "Well, let's have a look what he actually did."
Let's see what he actually did. And despite the fact he's been a little bit of a good boy and folded his clothes and made his bed in prison, let's see what he did.
Yeah. Well,
he does sound like a serial killer.
And it just so happens that Governor Wilson was asked whether or not California deserved the blame for Roxanne Hayes' death, considering that he was let out after 8 years from what he did to Mary and everything else. And Governor Wilson replied, "I'm afraid that's an accurate charge."
Yeah.
Yeah. So
indeed.
Partly as a result of the Singleton case, Governor Wilson noted that the state sentencing laws had been stiffened significantly. And if Singleton had been sentenced today for the charges he was convicted of in 1978, he would have drawn multiple 25-year to life sentences. And a judge could have stacked the sentences for each conviction instead of letting Singleton serve them simultaneously.
Yeah,
so Singleton would therefore not have been eligible for parole until he had served like 49 years, more than 6 times as long as he actually spent behind bars.
And that wouldn't have been enough, but it would have been a hell of a lot better.
Yeah.
And Roxanne Hayes would not have lost her life at the hands of the madman, and her children wouldn't have been without a mother.
Yeah.
So
I think Kelly raised it at a point. It helps if victims go to the parole hearings, but what victims want to do that annually, and that's probably right, because a lot of people do not go. There's some people, luckily, who go, are adamant, and they'll go through years by making sure these people stay behind bars. But sometimes that doesn't have.
Sometimes they don't even tell them, though, do they?
They don't even tell them.
Tell them.
We've had a few of them, and we've seen a few crimes where they didn't even get notified. It's just disgusting, really, especially when they live near them and things like that, Yeah,
and just another quick at the time when media seemed to focus a hell of a lot on the fact that she was a sex worker, as if that sort of excused the fact that she'd been murdered by the psychopath.
Right.
And that's absolutely disgusting. It shouldn't matter what she was. This man murdered her. This psycho was going to murder somebody anyway. He was determined to, and it's made out in the media like, oh, well, maybe she deserved it a little bit because she was a sex worker. No, nobody deserves to be at the hands and fall prey to a psycho like Lawrence Singleton.
Unfortunately, especially at the time, you had the same kind of mentality of adults at the time, like with her, maybe the 15-year-old. I'm sure some people said, silly little 15-year-old deserved it running away, because that's what people are like. They don't know the stories and things like that, and they just hear, these sort of aspects of the certain story, and they just.
But she wasn't just what she done for a living is irrelevant. She was a mother.
And nobody knows the story, right? I mean, it's easy. We hear it too often. All too many times people are judged on things like this, and that's the first place our thoughts go. But again, she had three children that are, that look to their mom
because of this sicko.
Yeah.
But I would bet my life on the fact that there are other victims out there.
Yeah.
Whether they're alive and just didn't say anything. Or because they were scared of him, or whether he actually killed somebody else and they didn't ever find the body, so he was never caught. That was not his first crime.
No,
definitely
it's
not.
It's kind of surprising that there weren't anyone come forward in his local areas. But then again,
he come from Florida, didn't he?
Yeah,
so he done this in California.
Yeah, but a lot of time when they actually first get victim, some people come forward who stay quiet, because if he's had a history of this.
Yeah. When he did get released and he went back to Florida, there was a huge kick up in Florida. They didn't want him there, and I think there was even like a bomb threat on his brother's house, and there was an explosion. I don't know if it was a controlled explosion. There was different reports that I read. He wasn't even staying with his brother, but. One of them said that the bomb went off. One of them said that they had to perform a controlled explosion, but people really did not want him anywhere near them, and rightly so, because he should have been in prison for the rest of his life.
If this were happening today, obviously with the social media and things like that, the story would have spread like wildfire, and there might have been more people coming forward. But first, you got the first story in 1978, which there was no social media whatsoever. And then you got the second one around 1998. Things were just starting to boom in that area, things like that. So I think we could all agree and concur that he had plenty of other victims. Now, Mary, I didn't actually find any actual interviews with her parents, but ultimately she did kind of have a falling out with them. And there was an article, and I think we've got that too, just the headline of it, where Mary's parents have no room in their hearts for hate. So I'm sure that they were talking about forgiveness and things like that. But she ended up having a falling out with them at some point, and her parents ended up divorcing. And it was actually her marriage, Mary's marriage, the one that failed. It was her mother-in-law from that marriage that she took on more of a role with as a mother-daughter relationship, and that she could confide in.
There was different reports about why she had run away, but obviously there was tensions even at 15 at home with her parents. I don't know. I couldn't really make sense of it. I'm not going to report something that I'm not sure on, because there was different reports saying that she'd run away. Some reports even said that she'd gone to her grandparents and she decided she wanted to go home, so she was hitchhiking back. But most of them say that she was a runaway.
I'm not sure what happened to the children, like in both instances.
I couldn't find what happened to Roxanne's children.
I know Mary tried to get married and things like that, and that failed a couple of times because obviously it's a lot of trauma and there was a lot of publicity around her. And
I know when he died. He died on death row from cancer. I know that she felt cheated. She felt a little bit cheated. He didn't ever get that justice. But she came to terms with it because her children now felt peace, because she lived in fear that he was going to come back, that he was like, even when he was in prison, is he going to escape? Is he going to get out? I mean, even though he was like in his 70s at the time, she was terrified of this man.
Yeah.
This woman was beyond the strength that she had, one, to get through the whole ordeal itself, to survive that, to make it out to that highway, then to go through the whole the surgeries and everything, and then to wear the prosthetics and things like that, and lose who she was, her identity, her love for dance, the problem with her parents, that kind of thing. She had these failed relationships. Well, when she ended up divorcing the father of her second child, things were not good for this woman. I think that the initial prosthetics that she had were given to her or made for her through donation or maybe through insurance. I can't quite remember how that went, but after that, she had a nightmare those prosthetics only last for so long. And later on, I think in 2003, she spoke about how she found a community in Gig Harbor and they didn't care about her prosthetic arms or her history. She didn't have the money to buy any high-end prosthetic arms.
No.
She made her own customized
Really?
one using spare parts from an old stereo system and a refrigerator.
Wow. Wow.
She made her own.
Yeah, because we take it for granted that nowadays if something tragic like that happens, you can get sort of repaired up in an instant, you know.
Yeah.
But back then that was expensive, but less known. People, the doctors and surgeons were not trained up in it or know how to do these sort of things. Fit them on correctly. They were ill fitted if they did get them. I mean, and they would.
I can't even
like perspective.
Yeah, I can't even comprehend the bravery.
No.
Bravery doesn't even cover.
No, it doesn't.
There's not even a word I don't think to cover.
No, her resilience and strength was just amazing. I mean, even after when she did divorce and she was out on her own, she over borrowed money for a down payment on a home after the divorce. And the home was repossessed in a matter of just a few months. And her boys, her two boys and herself spent a cold winter in an abandoned Arco station, a gas station, petrol station. So, I mean, things were not easy for this woman, but she did
actually do a civil suit against him as well and sued him. But obviously, he didn't have any money.
No. But, yeah, because there was an attorney that ended up doing this case pro bono for her. His last name was Edwards, and he represented her in the damage suit against Singleton, like you said. And she received, she did receive $13,000, but that was, you know, considering her condition and having the boys, that money was gone quickly. But like you said, she won a $2.5 million judgment against Singleton, but he was impoverished, you know. And
I would actually sued the state of California for letting him out in the trauma, and that's just me though, because she needs to pay for her medical expenses.
Absolutely. She's just an amazing person who later on, I mean, she started to do interviews for reputable people. She would only let a certain amount of people into her life. And she went to high schools and was even giving speeches and things like that. And don't hitchhike, don't do this. There was actually people heckling her. Like, I think there was one particular young boy or somebody heckled her, and she stopped doing those kind of speeches after that. And I can't even imagine what this kid or somebody would have said. What right would they have? What could they say?
Kids can be twats sometimes.
Well, absolutely, but it's horrible. So she did take up drawing, sketching. She became an artist and tried to earn some money in that way. And I think to this day still does some drawings and so she's just an amazing person, and still has a relationship with her two sons. And if you want to say she's doing okay, she did have terrible trauma after this and up until his death even. And I'm sure still to this day has.
It's going to haunt you for the rest of your life.
She would get tremors so bad and nightmares so bad that she even hurt herself during these dreams, these tremors. She like bruised or cracked her ribs or something like that. And I think I almost broke her nose just from the jostling about in bed and thrashing and everything. So she went through it all.
Well, I want to say it was a miracle that she survived, but I mean, how can you surmount something like that?
Well, I mean, she does have faith. She does have faith in God, and she put that faith out there. Thank goodness she did, because I don't know how
somebody watching over her.
I don't know how anybody could get through something like that without some faith. And she just daily thanked God for letting her wake up that day to get through another day. I think things are a lot better for her nowadays, but I would like to maybe follow up sometime and actually see, how things. She remains kind of private, obviously, so there's not a whole lot out there right now to find.
She should be given her privacy. I mean, she shouldn't be a public spectacle just because of what a crazy man done to her.
Right.
And it's constantly dredging it up as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to help. But yeah, that's it. That's the case of Lawrence Singleton. We should have actually called this the Mary Vincent episode.
Mary
and not
Vincent,
his name. But yeah, I might change that and not even give him the credit for the episode, because he was just an evil twat who tried to destroy her life. But she was a hell of a lot stronger, and she rebuilt it the best that she could, despite what this evil man did to her. And I hope he burns in hell.
Yeah.
Hello, it's me again. I'm just looking after the dog at the same time. No, I was just going to butt in here. It's because of the Singleton bill. I don't know if that's going or not.
There's a lot of we couldn't. There was some things that said that it didn't get passed, and there's some things that said it did get passed, and I couldn't make sense of it.
Yeah, I think the original one that we talked about, it was struck down. But after Roxanne Hayes' murder, the California lawmakers, they drafted the Singleton bill. And again, I don't think she should be honoring it with his name on it. I think it should have been Mary's or Roxanne's bill of some sort. But they set the minimum sentence for crimes involving torture like that. In other words, even if he didn't kill her, but tortured her the way that he did, that they would automatically get 25 years. Which still, people would argue is enough.
I heard of the bill before, but I had no idea what it was, and I only was, I'd known about this story about a year ago, I think, and then just recently reminded me of it, and it's strange.
Yeah, that is about all we've got time for this week. We'll be back next Tuesday with the final concluding part of the UFO chronology. We hope to see you then. In the meantime, head over to our website at thecuriouscasefiles.com and check out the store or become one of our patrons. And that's all for this week. All that's left to say is we will see you. When will we see them?
Yeah, thank you very much, everybody. See you next Tuesday. Hopefully next Tuesday, not Wednesday.
No, not Wednesday. It's supposed to be
Thank
Tuesday.
you very much.
Yeah.
Yes.
See you later.
Bye.